And we are now live here at TNN 2002 midterm live primary election news coverage. Thank you all of us who are joining here tonight. We are going to be going through a lot of data plus a lot of primary projections for tonight. Just sit back, relax, and enjoy as we uncover election night in America. So, as you see on your screen right here, this is the 2000 presidential election result about 2 years ago. The current president of the United States is Luigi Mangione with 483 electoral votes to Curtis Seward, the independent candidate, who was the alternative for the Republican Party with 55 electoral votes, to the Republican candidate, 0 electoral votes. When we move on to the popular vote of the 2000 presidential election, Luigi Mangione got 50.5% of the popular vote to the independent candidate, Curtis Seward, getting 38.8%, and the Republican candidate only garnering 10.8% of the popular vote. The battleground during this presidential election cycle was the state of Kentucky, North Carolina, Connecticut, Massachusetts, Texas, Pennsylvania, New York, Rhode Island, Missouri, West Virginia, New Mexico, and the state of Hawaii. Moving on. So we have the 2002 midterm generic ballot polling. Consistently, Republicans have led in the generic ballot polling, but have consistently been showing significant decline in terms of people identifying and saying that they plan for the vote for the Republican Party come the midterm. But only just 39% of Americans saying that they are going to be voting in the 2002 midterm for the Republican Party. As for the Democrats, with just 31.6% of Democrats saying that they plan to vote for the Democratic Party in the midterm, whereas there is a higher interest in voting for the Green Party with 14.4% and the Libertarian Party at just 5.8% of all national generic polling for the 2002 midterms. However, as we head over to the Mangione approval rating for the President of the United States, as you can see on your screen, the average approval rating for the United States president is 61.8 to disapproval 27.7% in terms of disapproval. This is going to be showcased tonight during the 2002 midterm to see how well Democrats are able to perform and whether or not the Mangione coalition can come out and be able to push the Democrats over the edge to get into the next to the next election cycle. As we start to head into the vice president's approval rating, he only has about roughly 55.8% to the disapproval 35.1%. All right, let's move on. Let's now head on with the results for tonight's. This is going to be a nice live stream. We have a whole bunch of news anchors with us, and I hope you guys enjoyed today's video.
Good evening and welcome to our live coverage of the 2002 midterm elections. Tonight, the primary political landscape of the nation hangs in the balance. Primary voters are heading to the polls in crucial governorship races across 4 key regions: the Northeast, the Midwest, the South, and the West. In the Senate, 6 critical seats are up for grabs in New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania, potentially shifting the upper chamber's control of the Senate if Democrats fall short in 4 key Senate races, locking Democrats from reaching the 50-seat threshold needed to maintain control of the Senate in the 2004 presidential election. Also, all 435 seats in the House of Representatives are being contested in what is seen as a major referendum on the first 2 years of President Luigi Mangione's administration. The polls have been fluctuating. It's hard to say who will come out on top. Candidate ground game, high voter turnout. The president 25% lead in his job. Approval rating matters in a midterm election like this. Stay with us as the results unfold.
Welcome to the official 2002 TNN election night news coverage. The polls are about to close in the South and Midwest. With 28% reporting so far, Midwest Democratic candidate Tom Higgins is currently holding a 3.7% lead over Republican candidate Skylar Bennett. With 28% reporting in from the South, Democratic candidate Ralph Northam is currently holding a 9.2% lead over Republican candidate Robert Lee. Oh wow, we already have more than half the batch of the vote in from the South. And at this hour, TNN believes the race is too early to call. Not close, just too early for a projection. Ralph Northam is holding a steady lead here over Robert Lee. However, independent candidate George Washington II is creating some headwinds for the Republican candidate tonight. We cannot make a projection at this hour, with 16.3% of the vote going to the independent candidate who is closing the gap behind Lee with a 12.3% margin at this time. Coming back to you live from the TNN primary decision desk, we can now project at 9:32 p.m. that the Midwest governor primary candidate Democrat Tom Higgins and Republican candidate Skylar B. Bennett will both be advancing into the general election. With only 52% in from the Midwest, we have officially called the race with just 3.5% separating the two candidates. It has become officially clear tonight that the Midwest governor race will be a hotly contested battleground this election cycle. Republican candidates all across the nation are overwhelmingly performing better than 2000. Now 9:30 p.m. on the East Coast, and the Northeast regions have just closed with 27% reporting in so far. Incumbent Democratic Governor John Baldacci currently in the lead over Republican candidate Brandon Smalls Jr. by a whopping 27.3% lead at this hour. We are expecting this race to be called early tonight, but the night is still young. Coming back to you, live from the TNN Primary Decision Desk. We can now project at 10:33 p.m. that the South Governor primary candidate Democrat Ralph Northam and Republican candidate Robert Lee will both be advancing into the general election. With 79% in from the South, we have officially called the race with a steady lead of 9.2% separating the two candidates. The South Governor race is expected to will be a hotly contested battleground. This election cycle, with primary candidates spending over $200 million on campaign ads alone, the most expensive race in the race this far. Independent hopeful George Washington II was hoping for a surprise upset but fell short of doing so. In a surprising twist, third parties overperformed in the South, garnering over 36% of the regional vote share. It's clearly obvious tonight. Third-party voters will decide whether or not there will be a Democratic or Republican victory in the South. However, there is a bright spot for the Northam campaign. He held to all the states President Mengione won 2 years prior. If that is any indication, Democratic voters seem very enthusiastic about their candidate, with 78% in from the Midwest. The margin is narrowing up, but marginally, with an occasional 0.04% back and forth towards each candidate. The Midwest governor primary has already been called for Tom Higgins and Schuyler B. Bennett. It's now 11:27 p.m. on the hour, with 52% still reporting from the Northeast. A projection has still not yet been called. The race is not too close to call, but TNN believes there might be some outstanding votes that might change the outcome. However, if current trends continue, we expect incumbent Governor John Baldacci to advance to the general election. This is not an official TNN announcement.
Two hours after the polls have closed, we have just gotten 28% of the vote share for New Jersey and Pennsylvania Senate races. New Jersey Senate Democratic candidate Leonard Kim holds a 27% lead over Republican candidate Bob Dole. We expect New Jersey Senate primary race to be called within the next hour, with both campaigns not experiencing any headwinds, with very low turnouts for the Libertarian and Green parties. In the state of Pennsylvania, Republican Senate primary candidate Brandon Smalls Jr. leads over Democratic candidate Benson by 14.9%. However, two Democratic candidates are fighting it out in the state of Pennsylvania jungle primary to be in the second slot to advance to the general election. Democratic candidate Chris DeLuzio is only 5% points behind Benson. Can Benson hold or expand his lead? Or can DeLuzio cause a surprise upset for the Democrats?
With 100% reporting in the Midwest region, Governor Democratic candidate Tom Higgins expanded his lead over Republican candidate Schuyler Bennett to 7.4%.
%52 now reporting out of the Northeast region. The race is too close at this hour. Incumbent Governor John Baldacci is still ahead with 16.6% lead over Republican Governor candidate Brandon Smalls Jr. However, Libertarian candidate Alexander Anzalone made up a lot of ground with just 53% currently reporting. Hypothetically, if the 79% of total raw vote comes in and the current trends hold, it looks like Libertarians might have a shot at overtaking the Republicans. That's an if, not a definite. We will only wait and see.
All right, coming back to you from the TNN Primary Decision Desk.
We can now project the polls have officially closed in the West region. With just 30% reporting, JCB for the Mangione administration is running for elected office for the West governorship. Independent Democratic-backed candidate JCB is in the lead with 54.5% over Republican candidate Napoli Cloutier, 40.0%. A margin of just 14.5% with 30% reporting. We have a major projection from the TNN Primary Decision Desk. We can now project that the New Jersey Senate primary candidate Democrat Leonard Kim and Republican candidate Bob Dole will both be advancing into the general election. With only 51% in from New Jersey, we have officially called the race with just 16.3% separating the two candidates. Senate Democratic candidate Leonard Kim is improving upon President Luigi Mangione margin from 2,000. Exactly what the candidate needs in order to advance to the general election.
The Pennsylvania Senate race just updated the vote tally with 54% reporting in so far. The Senate primary race is telling a story. Democratic voters have to decide would they prefer a centrist Democrat or a progressive Democrat to advance to the general election. Republican Senate candidate Brandon Smalls Jr. currently holds his lead at 40% support, while Democrat Benson fell to 21.8% support, and Democrat DeLuzio narrowed the gap with 20.1%, a margin of just 1.7% between the two. Meanwhile, Libertarian candidate Sean Wilkins Jr. is not too far behind either, with just 16.3% of the vote. Pennsylvania Senate race is truly a hotly contested battleground, not a battle for the top slot, but rather a battle for who will face off against Republican candidate Brandon Smalls Jr.
All right, coming back to you live from the TNN Primary Decision Desk, we can now project that the New York Senate race is now officially reporting with 28% of the vote in. Democrat Senate candidate Santos leads by a wide margin over Republican-backed independent candidate Schuyler by 33.3%. If current trends hold, we can expect a call to be made at the 1 a.m. hour. But if this night has taught us anything, is that this primary election is like the 2000 presidential election, with independent candidate Silva overperforming the Republican Party. But tonight it appears the Republicans regained back some of their defectors.
With 100% reporting in the Northeast region, we can now project that incumbent Democratic Governor John Baldacci and Republican candidate Brandon Smalls Jr. will advance to the general election. Governor Baldacci officially leads Smalls Jr. by 26%. Both candidates rallied their voters to lock the Libertarian rising star Alexander Anzalone out of the general election. Typical and expected behavior from a conservative bloc that is still reeling from their division in 2000. Unity can oftentimes prevent diversity in perspective and lessen the representation model for all parties.
With 54% in from the West, the margin is narrowing up quickly between the two candidates, with a margin of just 7.4% separating the two. Independent candidate JCB leads with just 47.4% to Republican nationalist candidate Napoli Cloutier, 40%. The West has become a surprising hotspot of the night. Will the 80% vote share show a wider margin for a candidate, or will it narrow the gap? We will surely find out soon.
It's now 1:11 a.m. on the hour with 80% reporting from New Jersey. The race is too close to call, but TNN is confident the outstanding votes will not force the network to redact their projection. However, at this time, Democrat Leonard Kim and Republican Bob Dole will be advancing to the general election as projected earlier. The candidates now stand with just a margin of 8% between the two, a decrease of 8% gap between the two candidates.
We have a major projection from the TNN primary decision desk. We can now project that, in the state of Pennsylvania more ballots are being counted, we are now at 79% reporting. The story of the night is Democrat progressive candidate DeLucio pulls ahead of centrist moderate Democrat Benson with a difference of a narrow 1.9%. However, with a margin this narrow, we cannot make two projections in the state of Pennsylvania till more votes are counted and verified. However, we don't expect the second projection to take days as Pennsylvania poll workers are used to the extreme intensity of Pennsylvania battleground status. But we can officially confirm that Republican Senate candidate Brandon Smalls Jr. will be advancing to the general election. But his opponent is still being decided by the very last vote.
Live from the TNN primary decision desk, we have a major projection tonight. We can now project that the New York Senate race is now ready to be called. Senate hopeful Santos will be advancing to the general election. We are also projecting the same for his independent opponent, Schuyler. With the state of New York officially reporting with 53% of the vote in, Democrat Senate candidate Santos leads by a wide margin over Republican-backed independent candidate Schuyler by 22%. It asks a decrease from the 29% reporting, but that is because third parties' votes are being counted, not because Schuyler is actually gaining traction. We can comfortably make an early call tonight.
Live from the TNN primary decision desk. We can now project that the West governor race is now ready to be called. Democrat-backed independent FBI director JCB will be advancing to the general election. We are also projecting Republican Governor Hopeful Cloutier will also advance to the general election, with the West region officially reporting with 79% of the vote in. Independent governor candidate JCB leads by a comfortable margin over Republican candidate Cloutier by 11.3%. In other words, a difference of 1,929 votes between the candidates. TNN Decision Desk determined we can officially call this race because there is not enough votes for any third party to overtake the Republicans.
We have a major projection from the TNN primary decision desk. We can now project that in the state of Pennsylvania with 99% reporting. We can now project that Democrat DeLuzio will be facing off against Republican Smalls Jr. in the general election, which we have called his victory hours ago. The story of the night is Democratic progressive candidate DeLuzio pulled a surprising upset against centrist and establishment-backed Democrat Benson with a difference of 3.7%.
All right, here we go. The thing we've all been waiting for. All races have projected two winners that have each advanced to the general election within their respective jungle primary format. We sent our TNN exit pollsters all across the nation to ask the likely voter at the polls, if given a choice in a hypothetical election contest between the two projected winners in each region, how would you vote today? And so here are the results. In the true battleground keystone state of Pennsylvania Senate race, TNN officially rates the race as a pure toss-up. In a hypothetical election contest between Democrat DeLuzio versus Republican Smalls Jr., it is a virtual tie with less than 15 votes separating the two. In the closely watched Garden State of New Jersey Senate race, TNN officially rates the race as a tilt or lean D. In a hypothetical election contest between Democrat Kim versus Republican Dole, it is a close contest, and even a 1% swing nationally can change the race. Kim is in the lead over Dole by 3.8%, with an uncomfortable 23,483 votes separating the two. In another closely watched race, the Midwest region is considered a true battleground in competitive years. TNN officially rates the governor race as a tilt or lean R. In a hypothetical election contest between Democrat Tom Higgins versus Republican Schuyler B. Bennett, it is a close contest, and even a 1% swing nationally can change this race. Schuyler B. Bennett is in the lead over Higgins by 3.7%, with 196,045 votes, separating the two. In the Empire State of New York Senate race, TNN officially rates the race as likely D. In a hypothetical election contest between Democrat Santos versus Independent Republican Schuyler, it is a somewhat close contest, and even a 5% swing nationally can change the race. Santos is in the lead over Schuyler by 9.4%, with 121,028 votes separating the two. The West governor race is a race to watch. The West region is considered a true battleground. It was once reliably Republican since 1960s, but has since shifted leftward since President Clinton's 1992 presidential victory. TNN officially rates the governor race as a safe independent. In a hypothetical election contest between independent Democrat JCB versus Republican Cloutier, it is a somewhat close contest, and even a 7% swing nationally can change the race. JCB is in the lead over Cloutier by 14.2%, within 692,031 votes separating the two. The South governor race is a race to watch. The South region, it was once reliably Republican since 1960s, but has since shifted leftward since President Clinton's 1992 presidential victory. It did return home to Dole in 1996. But 4 years later, the trend continues. More leftward, with the 2000 election of President Mangione, the first Democrat to sweep the full South since FDR 1944 election. TNN officially rates the governor race as a safe Republican. In a hypothetical election contest between Democrat Northam versus Republican Lee, it is a somewhat a safe contest, and even a 9% swing nationally can change the race. Lee is in the lead over Northam by 19.9%. Lastly, the Northeast governor race is a race to watch. The Northeast region, it was once reliably Republican since 1980s, but has since shifted leftward since President Clinton's 1992 presidential victory. In the 2000 election of President Mangione, he carried the Northeast region comfortably despite states within the regions like New York, Massachusetts, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, and Connecticut all being considered battlegrounds. CNN officially rates the governor race as a safe Democrat. In a hypothetical election contest between Democrat Baldacci versus Republican Smalls Jr., it is a somewhat a safe contest, and even an 11% swing nationally can change the race. Baldacci is in the lead over Smalls Jr. by 22.3%, within 5,602 votes separating the two. Look to the New York and Pennsylvania Senate races to see whether or not the governor is overperforming the Senate candidate margin there.
All right. So what do you guys think so far? My election night crew, what do you guys think?
That was kind of crazy.
Really? Why do you think that?
Well, George Washington almost upsetted the Lee, and libertarian and third parties around the country was doing well and almost beat Republicans.
He got roughly around 18.5% of the popular vote. What do you think that George Washington could have done differently in order to have at least taken the slot away from Robert Lee and advance to the general election? What do you think George Washington should have done in order to advance? Excuse me.
Probably campaign more. He didn't campaign as much. And try to reach out to other southern states, not just Virginia.
Okay. All right. And all right, so let's take a look at some of the results here. What do you want to talk about in terms of the result tonight? Do you want to do a side-by-side comparison to the result in 2000?
If you want to.
Yeah, okay, let's go ahead. Let's take a look and see how the independent performed in the South and compared to how George Washington performed in this election, at least in the primary. Let's go ahead. Let's take a look at Virginia. Virginia was won by the Democrat by 47.1%, and that was a 9-point margin. When you look at the results here, you look at the results, you start to do the comparison. It's about roughly around a 9-point margin between the Republican and the Democrat. Although the Democrat did underperform Mangione in the 2000 election, it does give us a clear indicator to what is going on nationally, especially when you go to the battleground in North Carolina from 2000. Mangione won that state by 7 percentage points, or roughly 50%, which means Democrats on average, based off of what we're getting at the data, it looks like they're underperforming about roughly 20 percentage points. What do you think that might mean for the general election, at least for the midterm? Do you think that there's a strong possibility that Republicans could actually run away with this if Democrats have low enthusiasm?
Yeah, I think it's possible because if you think about it, the ruling party usually loses midterm elections, and the ruling party right now is the Democrats. And what we see in the midterms right now, there's a lot of close races. But like some other races that was surprisingly not close, that was thought to be close, like the New York Senate was supposed to be close, and now it's not really.
So let's go ahead. Let's take a look at the New York Senate, right? You said you wanted to look at the Senate? So the New York Senate right now is 52.9% for George Santos to Philip Scheider, the independent, was caucusing with the Republicans at 32.3%. So if this holds, and just say all the Democrats come out for George Santos in the general election, and all the Republicans come out, but the Green Party and the Libertarian Party stay home, we're looking about around a 60% popular vote margin for George Santos, where you fall roughly around 2.3%. Do you think that you're able to convince crossovers or Libertarian or Green voters to vote for the independent candidate over George Santos, or do you think that you might actually lose?
I think it's very possible, because most of his policies is more moderate than anything. Like his policies, like higher taxes on the wealthy, um, things. He signed about like 5 bills so far in Congress that hasn't been voted on.
Okay.
So he's like very moderate. So I think it's possible, because
Okay.
the reason why he didn't do good was the third parties. If you add up the third parties, that's like 14%. And I think a lot of Democrats could go to Philip because of his moderate platform.
And what do you think about the Pennsylvania Senate race, especially for the Republican? A progressive Democrat won in the state of Pennsylvania, at least for the primary to be caucused into the general election. Chris Deluzio versus Benson, the centrist candidate. What do you think about the dynamic there? What do you think that means for the Democratic Party? Do you think that because it's a highly contested race between Chris Deluzio and Benson, that it could be kind of like alienating to those who are voting for the moderates over the progressive? Do you think that that might actually swing the race in favor of the Republicans, or do you think the Democrats are going to be unified against the Republican Party regardless of political ideology?
Well, if you Pennsylvania's a weird case. The closest primary in like projections wise, like Benson was holding up for a while and then got overtaken by Chris Deluzio. And if you add up the moderates, which there's only like one, but like there's a lot of conservative. You can see most of the third parties was conservatives. So like all the third parties was conservative voters. Like Sheen and Anna was both conservative. And conservative voters will lean to probably vote more conservative to well, Benson's probably gonna, the Democrats will probably unite with under Chris to try to beat Brandon, but I think they would still lose it because of the amount of conservative voters that voted in the primary.
Do you believe that the exit polls are being accurate in terms of the sense that Pennsylvania is a pure toss-up, or do you believe that like the result is more skewed toward the conservative because there were many conservatives running on the ballot and they gained a lot of votes compared to the Democrat or the centrist candidate for the Democratic Party? What do you think? Do you think that this accurately reflects the data or not really?
Well, if you go past by the past forecasts and exit polls we've been doing, right? They got a lot of things wrong, right? They got Pennsylvania that had it likely Democrat, and we could see it was a Republican by a couple points because of the split. They had the Midwest going Democrat. They had the South going Democrat, which did happen, but the South was expected to go close, which wasn't by 2 points. The West was expected to go Democrat by 14.7, which it did do that. That was the one that was right. The Midwest Democrat 1.7, which it got wrong by like 7 points. The Northeast, they under expected John, because they said Democrat 12.6, and you can see 55% to 29, which is an entire sweep in the Northeast. And had New Jersey 21 points, New York 12.5. So
Okay. Jake, what do you think about the results tonight?
I think the results are very interesting. That Pennsylvania race was probably the most interesting of the night, considering, there was two Democrats and a Republican. There was some speculation about would the two Democrats potentially lock out the Republican, but I think it got kind of to a point where it's like, no, they're probably going to split the vote from each other. I thought, I just thought a lot of these races were were very interesting. It was very interesting to see, like, in the governor's race in the Northeast, like, Baldacci won every single, like, county, or every single state, excuse me. Like, that was an insane margin.
Okay, and what do you think about
I
the
feel like,
Yep.
and
Okay, sorry, go ahead.
no, what were you saying?
I was saying, what do you think about the South as well? Do you have anything to say to
Yeah,
the South or the West?
yeah, the South one is very interesting too, considering that yeah, I mean, I think the South is kind of like the Pennsylvania Senate race in a way, because if you look, there's an independent who's backed by Republicans, as well as a Republican, and then a Democrat, and I think that the splitting of George Washington and the second and Robert Lee is what made some of these traditionally more redder states blue, at least for the primary election, and was able to give Northam a pretty sizable win over Robert Lee and his other opponents.
And what do you think about like the state of Pennsylvania being a toss-up, categorized by TNN based off the exit polling data, not based off of external factors of the voters who say they're going to vote but they never show up at the poll? These are real likely voters, likely results. What do you say to this specific exit polling for Pennsylvania specifically?
Well, I think it makes a lot of sense. Pennsylvania traditionally is more of a swingy state, and we knew that it was going to be one of these swingy states anyway, as a toss-up. And I think this is, the reason why it's rated a toss-up is it can go either way. And I think the results tonight showed that it deserves to be a toss-up because of just how competitive the two Democrats were fighting for second place, DeLuzio and Benson. Um, I think it's fascinating. It's probably going to be the most interesting Senate race of this cycle. I think maybe the most interesting race of this cycle, as a whole, because of just how close it's going to be. I think in November it's probably going to be right around this range that it's currently at. That's being shown on the screen. The likely voters may be skewed one way or the other, but yeah, it's gonna be tight.
And what do you think about like the fact that so like the state of Pennsylvania being a toss-up state? Let's go ahead. Let's take a look at the 2000 election. This is the 2000 election with President Mangione. This is the first midterm election cycle. The state of Pennsylvania was considered and classified as a battleground for the 2000 election. President Mangione only won that state by only 52.2% of the popular vote. That's a 9-point margin. But for the independent candidate, they got 43.5% of the popular vote to the Republicans only just having 4.3%, which means that there is an electorate in the state of Pennsylvania that is very swingy and doesn't have loyalty to party definition. Do you think that there's a plausibility that the Democrats should come out in the state of Pennsylvania with 52.2%? And it doesn't matter if the Democrats win or lose the independent vote, as long as they keep onto the Mangione vote, the coalition that he built during the 2000 election cycle, that will be just enough to be able to give them the state of Pennsylvania. Do you think that a state like Pennsylvania could be able to provide this?
Well, yes, the results clearly show that it's a swingy state. Considering, I mean, the independent candidate was more a Republican in the presidential, but it was a good it's a good indicator
Okay.
to show
And so,
the
what
toss up.
about the state of New Jersey being lean and classified by the TN projection team as lean Democrat, or so to speak, tilt Democrat? They project that right now Laura Kim is currently ahead of Bob Dole, the Republican, with only about roughly 3 percentage points different between one another. Does any of you guys like to make a comment on this and whether or not you agree or disagree with the terminology used here? Okay, seems like there's a consensus that there is
I
no. Go ahead.
yeah, I got something. Can I see the results from the primary again? The
Yes,
final tabulation.
absolutely.
Um, let's see, because right now it's lean D with around a 3-point advantage. And look, yeah, I mean that right there with Leonard Kim, that's basically the margin that he had um, on that. Yeah, right there. That's basically that is the exact same margin actually. So um, I think that that's an advantage for Kim because obviously he got over 50% and was able to get a large majority and consensus of the vote. I still think it's gonna be a tight race in November, but we'll see what happens.
Do you think that the Democrat would expand his margin, or you think the Republicans might be able to narrow the gap?
The Republicans might be able to narrow the gap a little bit. I think a little bit, but I don't think it's going to be drastic enough.
Okay, so let's go ahead. Let's take a look at the next exit polling data. Let's take a look at that. Let's pull it up. The next one. Let's do the state of New York. That is also classified as TN for being roughly between 9 percentage points different between the senator or, Senator hopeful George Santos, which is currently ahead right now, 53.8%, and Philip Scheider with 44.4%. So based off of this knowledge here, do you think that New York is truly going to be a battleground, or could there be a surprise upset? Considering the fact that there is about roughly 2 or 3 points that haven't been projected onto this margin here, which means that there is still an outstanding amount of voters who are undecided.
Do you got anything, Hamilton?
Go ahead, Owen.
Since this is your state,
You
Owen.
want to?
Because
Yeah, I
I'll
think it's
chime in if
possible.
Owen doesn't, but I'm going to let Owen have first right since this is his state.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think based off the map, I think it is
All right, I'll just
possible.
go. Yeah, I mean, this is one that's going to be interesting to me because the fact that you have somebody running as an independent like Philip Schuler, who is backed by the GOP. Some people might just vote independent just to kind of vote independent. Um, that's kind of how voters think their mind. Like he doesn't have an R next to his name, but he doesn't have a D, and some people, and there might be some. Obviously, a lot of Republicans will probably vote independent, but there might be some Democrats that even decide to vote independent. I think the likely decategorization is a good one and is probably the right one for this race. But I do think this race could be a lot closer than a lot of people expect.
I think
Go ahead.
it is possible, very possible for a flip because
No, I got nothing.
Philip is independent, doesn't have the Republican, right? And New York is special, But the reason why he didn't really win in the primary was it was basically a two-way race. No matter what, whoever was gonna win, so probably a little turnout on that. But there was a lot of good third parties. You saw John Doe getting 11%. But he has endorsements from other candidates from other races. He has been endorsed by JCB. He has been endorsed by the Speaker of the House, Evander. He's been endorsed by a lot of Democrats and a lot of powerful people. So I think it's very possible.
And what do you guys think about the fact that New York was always classified in every election in the Leo paradox universe? On the presidential level, New York has always been consistently categorized as a battleground. Specifically on the presidential election, it has always consistently voted for the Democrats majority of the time, but there was the one time back in the original timeline in 2020 where the state of New York voted for the third party candidate over the Republicans or the Democrats. What do you think that this could indicate for New York and the state of New York specifically? Do you think that that might mean that New Yorkers at least in the state of the Leo paradigm that they are more willing to vote against party loyalty and kind of vote on a surprise upset. Yes, they lean towards the Democrats. Absolutely, there's no arguing there. But there has been some sort of flirtation within the state of New York where they want to vote other ways, but in like an upsetting category. What do you guys say to that, Owen or Jake?
I guess I'll go. Well, New York, there's a lot of Republicans in New York. The thing is, New York, there's only have been like two strong people in New York, right? There's Chris Luigi, right? Powerful people, right? And then you got other New Yorkers, right? Who like CODIS, who made it a swing state. Almost a lot of elections recently on the presidential election had at least one person from New York, either on president or vice president. Usually in every election. Like in 2000, CODIS from New York, 2000, considered swing state. Polling
Luigi's home state, the president of the United States, Luigi's home state is actually Texas. Because Bush has his home state in Florida, I don't know if you guys know this. It's actually pretty interesting. This is something that me and Leo always have to make sure of. We always ask people when they initially sign up for the presidential election. According to New York state law and also the U.S. law, two candidates cannot be on the same presidential ticket from the same state. So you must move home states in order to win that state. So what me and Leo have come to do is exactly what not New York, but specifically the U.S. law does, is that with two presidential candidates are still living at the same home, by the time of the election day, they do not qualify to gain any electoral votes from the state. But even if they won the popular vote, they cannot gain those electoral votes. That is why in every presidential election, a candidate always has to have a running mate from an alternative geographical state to ensure that they are eligible to win those electors.
Wait, I thought Luigi was South Carolina.
That is Luigi. No, that was Christopher Oliva the second.
Oh.
Yeah. So you can see here in the state of New York, what's considered a battleground in 2000, Mangione won it by 13 percentage points, but the popular vote for the Democrats here was only 54.3%. When you go take a look at the results here in New York for George Santos, he got 52.9%, which means that he underperformed about 1.5% for the Democrats. When we take a look at John Bakaki, or whatever you say his name, he got 55.6%, which means the governor in the Northeast region overperformed Mangione in 2002 midterm primary, whereas George Santos underperformed by 2 percentage points. What do you guys say to that?
I think it's a clear sign that a lot of people want change in New York, because you can see in the New York Senate, it did vote George Santos, right? But the thing is, it is very close compared to other races, which makes it very easier for a possible upset in the general, because usually polls get it wrong almost all the time. We've seen it in this primary and other elections. Polls usually get wrong, even before the reset. It was known for polls being wrong, right? So if the polls right now, which the polls been saying for a long while that Democrats are gonna win, there's a chance that Philip could do an upset, especially as an independent.
Okay. And so, Jake, do you have any sort of rebuttal to that, or would you like to, move on? It's up to you, and you can even talk about what's on the screen right now as well, or you can do both.
Well, I agree basically with what Owen said. So I don't really think I need to go much more into it.
Okay. So what do you guys think about the exit polling for the Northeast region? Do you agree or disagree that TNN marked it as safe Democrat for John Bakaki over Republican Brandon Small Jr.?
Agree.
I think that's probably the right characterization considering what Baldacci did by sweeping every single state in the region. Now, again, a lot of that could have been because of the split, voting with the open primary system, but still, that's a pretty good indicator that it's probably going to be a safety race, and that the Republican probably isn't very likely to win. Not saying it couldn't happen, but yeah.
Okay. And we are going to move on to the next one. And let's talk about the next exit polling. Leo, if you want to jump in at any point in time, by all means, go ahead. Okay, we now have the South region. Let's take a look at that exit polling here. We marked it as safe Republican. Despite it going toward the Democrats on the primary, TNN agrees that the South region leans heavily more towards the Republican, at least by 19 percentage points or more. Do you guys agree or disagree? Or do you think that the 2000 election was a reshaping or realignment in the South? Or you think that Mangione winning the entire southern region of the United States, the first time a Democrat has done so since 1944, was a realignment period? Or you think that Mangione is what they call a once-in-a-lifetime candidate who does the impossible, and that it does not reflect the national demographic in terms of voting patterns?
I think the TNN projection is wrong for the South because it's a very close election, and it's depending on how the third-party voters and the third-party candidates endorse. Most likely who will win, because the GOP was split and the GOP needs to find an answer. If the GOP candidate endorses the other candidate, it might be game over for Lee.
Okay, and Jake, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I agree. I think that this is probably the right projection. Is that if you take a look, Robert Lee only won one state. Like I said earlier, that was probably because of the open primary split system. So the Republicans split the vote. I don't think that margin, if we take a look here, that I don't think that would necessarily stay, but I do think overall, it depends on who those independent voters go to, like Owen said. If they go to Robert Lee, I think Lee then has a very good chance of winning. But if some of them, and they split it like 50-50, then I think it's going to be a lot closer. Even with the Green candidate, I think if you split their voters in half, it's going to be a very close race. And obviously, those voters are going to have to decide between Lee and Northam. So I do disagree with the projection. I think it'll be a closer race, but we'll see what happens.
And do you guys think that, okay, so both of you guys are in agreement here and you seem to, disagree with Teen and projection. Do you believe that based off of your notion here that the South will be classified as a toss-up, or do you think it leaned one way or the other? Specifically with 36% of those who voted in the southern region voted for the Independent Party. How do you think they plan to vote if they were to show up at the polls?
It's just based off how the candidates endorse. Because if you get Washington to endorse Ralph Northam, which the people who's in the general election, that's the game plan. Because if you think about it, they at least need, if they get at least 60% of Washington's voters, they get a good chance to win it. So they need to at least get Washington on their side, right? So that's what both candidates are going to try to do. But it's depending on who he endorses, which is the leading third-party candidate, other than the other ones. And the other ones could also endorse the other candidates, which would make this a even more closer race. But if Washington just, let's say, endorsed Robert Lee, that 60% it's possible. If, let's say, Washington endorsed Ralph somehow, it's a real different story. It's all based off how the candidates endorse.
Okay, and so, it's really interesting that you guys both mentioned endorsement as one of the key factors for who wins or who loses. President Mangione opted out to not endorse any candidate in the primary race. If the President of the United States decided to endorse a candidate, well, regardless of the party denomination, do you think that that would have a seismic effect on who wins or who loses, considering the fact that when we go in and take a look at the polling data for the president's approval rating, I'm going to pull it up right now. The president's approval rating is roughly 61.8 to the disapproval just being 27.7 percentage point. What do you guys think that that might have a seismic raise? Would that indicate or be indicator of the president performing or the party performing well in the general election? Or you think that the president's approval rating doesn't really matter in the midterm year because it always is a form of rejection against the president of the United States?
I think it could be mixed of both. I mean, I do think people are going to try to vote in the way of opposing the president, because that's typically how midterms go. However, I do believe that if with where Magione's approval rating is at, that we could maybe see a shift in that philosophy from recent years.
Okay, and what'd you call it? Owen, what do you think about that?
I think most likely a lot of moderate people who's running in very democratic areas, right, will really need a strong endorsement, right? Because strong endorsements could change it, right? So yes, midterms, right, is based off the hating on the president. But if you see the approving rating, you see how last election went. Every candidate is probably, if they're in a close race, they probably are begging or asking for an endorsement by the president, because that could literally make or break their campaign. Kind of like how the South will make or break how those candidates will endorse. Same thing with how the president will endorse in every race. It could change everything.
Okay, and so with that data, we were just told by Liam that if we scroll down to the 2002 midterms, we can access the newest refined data for the 2002 midterms. And currently, the most projected data, we actually have Democrats ahead, and it's generic polling data for the midterm, with Democrats are currently ahead at 35.3% to the Republican 29.4%, with 17.6% going to the Green Party. What do you guys say about this, considering that the new polls have been the first time the Democrats have led? And when you take a look at the data here, the last time Democrats have led or even evened out was December 28th, and the last time since then the Democrats were in the projected lead for the generic ballot polling was back in December 12th of 2005. This is the first time Democrats are leading again in generic ballot polling. Do you think that that is an outlandish thing, that maybe possibly this is just a once in a lifetime and maybe as an outlier? Or do you think that that is an indicator of a new trend moving forward?
Well, in that poll, you can see the third party votes, right? 17% Green and like 3 to 5% Libertarian. What we need to see is most of the primaries, except like maybe one election, has independents, right? So we need to be like, if we're going by general ballot, yes, but in most other races, it's just Republican and Democrat. So until we can see like polls without third parties, we can get a more understanding of what's happening.
So, okay, so if we're going to use that denomination here, we're going to come with that conclusion. Let's take 35 minus, well, 35.3 minus 29.4. That pushed it at a 5.9 percentage points for the Democrats in terms of the Republican. That's roughly, if you take a look at the data here for the mid primary, on average, that has been somewhat within the margin of error, at least in most of these races, if not the closer ones. So, like more of like Pennsylvania or New Jersey. And if you do the margin here, it is going to come very close if you think about it in that aspect. What's also interesting too is March 24th is when we did the the approval rating and coinciding with the generic ballot polling for the 2002 midterm. Let's go ahead. Let's take a look at President Mangioni's approval rating around this period. So he had around 69 to 54.5 percentage points in terms of the average. And even though he was leading the popular vote, I mean, not leading the popular vote, but leading in the national generic approval rating, and you compare that to the March 24th, the Democrats, even with on March 21st, the Republicans led with 50% of the popular vote. And then, you take a look at March 21st, the president had a 69% approval rating. So do you think that the polls are incorrect, or do you think that the Mangione approval rating isn't really translating into votes? Anyone?
Sorry, I stepped away for a second. Can you repeat that?
Yeah. So when you take a look at the March 24th, 2026 generic ballot polling, Democrats lead by 35.5%. And on March 21st, 2026, Republicans are ahead in generic ballot polling for the midterm with 50% of the popular vote. When you take a look at Mangione's approval rating during this time period, Mangione's approval rating at the same time the Republicans were leading in the generic ballot polling was 69 percentage points for the president's approval. And for March 27th, the president's approval was at 54.5%. What do you think that this means long term? Do you think that, the president's approval isn't automatically translating into votes?
I don't know. I mean, I think it could be, but I don't think so. I think ultimately what it is just voters in some sense want maybe a new voice or different voices. I think that's probably the only assumption I can make from this.
Okay, no worries. Owen, you have anything you'd like to add?
No, it's the same thing P said.
Okay, so I'm going to fill in the map that we have based off of the 2002 midterm primary to see what the alternative map would look like in 2004, hypothetically speaking. How would the Democrats perform? So far with the Northeast, the Democrats are ahead now with 208. Also Missouri, they also won Missouri. That's interesting. Then we have the entire South. So let's go ahead. Let's fill in the entire South. It's blue.
Oklahoma went red.
Yep. Right, I think that. Okay, and then the entire red wall. Okay. I'm going to give the second district to the Democrat because the Democrat won that last time. So we're going to keep that as such. Okay, interesting. So it kind of looks like what you would expect. So as of right now, if we were to take the primary results, it kind of looks like a giant landslide is what this looks like. With the Democrats at 484 electoral votes, the Republican 54 electoral votes. If we compare that to Mangione's election, that would mean that the Republicans are underperforming. And the Democrats are actually overperforming Mangione. Just by a little bit, but it's still significant nonetheless. What do you guys think about this? That this was the primary map.
It's fascinating. It no doubt is. And I do think that this map, if we revisit this in November, after the midterms. I do think it will change because I think a lot of the more Republican states will probably go back to being red, specifically in the South, because again, those states I think were traditionally blue because of the fact that there was multiple candidates on the ballot, and it kind of split the vote. That's kind of the way I see it.
You want to know, for me, that I thought was really surprising was the fact that Ralph Northam won a lot of the South, specifically like the deep, deep blue South. It's specifically like, normally Mangione will carry that, and that's not to be unexpected. But when you start to look at the dynamic more so for, the Republican Party, you start to ask yourself, like, okay, this is a little strange.
Yeah, no, that is. I'm right with you there.
But I was like, okay, that's interesting. I'm really excited to see what the 2002 midterm is going to look like. I'm really excited to see who's going to come out on top, who's not going to come out on top. And even when you start to take a look more specifically at the 2000, Senate map, the Democrats really dominated here. They really dominated for the 2000 Senate map. Let me just pull that up right now for you guys. Right, so you can kind of see here the Democrats really swept and only lost 2 Senate seats, but swept 54 Senate seats. Now we have the state of New York, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania being decided by this midterm. What's really interesting about these 3 states, specifically that there's 6 Senate seats up for grab from these 3 states alone, what I find really interesting is the fact that when you start to look at the dynamic and look at the data in those 3 states, and you start to really put it all together, that it's just say the Democrats lose 2 Senate races in either New York, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey, and they lose 4 Senate seats together combined. Guess what happened? You blocked the Democrats from having this majority in the 2004 election if you sweep every single state on this map that's not colored. I don't know what that was, but okay. What do you guys think about that? The fact that the Republicans could possibly lock the Democrats out from a 50-state majority or 50-seat majority ahead of the 2004 election. All they need to do is either win Pennsylvania, New York, or New Jersey, 2 out of those 3 races, and they lock the Democrats out of a majority going into the 2004 election cycle.
Yeah, I think that would be, fascinating if that happened, because we don't really see sometimes lockouts happen like that in politics, but in elections. But yeah, I mean, I think that'd be really interesting if that did happen.
And Owen, what do you think about this?
It would be cool if it happened, but even if it would happen, the VP would just have to come over votes and break the ties.
Okay, and I also want to ask you too. I think it might be really interesting dynamic for you guys. As you all know, in the server, we now have gerrymandering. Gerrymandering has not been adopted in the 2000 election cycle for the president, but now it will be adopted in this election cycle and every election going forward. The only states that are currently gerrymandering are the Libertarians and the Democratic Party. What do you think that this is going to showcase ahead of the 2002 midterm House results? Do you think that the Democrats are still going to be able to hold on to those gerrymandered districts? Or do you think that the Republicans will just be locked out of the House up until 2010?
I'm not sure. I mean, we haven't really gotten any indications that there's going to be any major gerrymandering. So I can't say for certain because I don't know.
Okay. Owen?
I can't say either, but if you try to base it off the primary results, it doesn't make sense. So we still don't know. You have to wait.
Okay. And this will be the first election cycle where it happens, so I'm really curious to see how it's going to play out.
Guys, you want to try to predict, do predictions?
You want to go back to the predictions? Yeah, we can go back to the predictions. Let's go to another state. Let me pull it up.
No, We make our predictions to think.
Oh yeah. Where you want me to? How you want me to do that?
Yeah.
How you want me to do it, Owen?
Like YapMS.
You said you want me to go to. Oh, okay. Got it.
I
Let
was
me
gonna
pull
say
it up.
that, or just do state by state or race by race.
Okay, let's do that. Clear this. Let me clear this out. All
Race
right.
by race in YapMS.
Okay. Perfect. We're here. You guys go. What do you guys think would be the map for New York Senate race? What do you guys say you would put it as? Put your map.
I put tilt Republican
For what?
for New York Senate.
For New York? Okay. So you put it as no tilt. Okay. What about the state of Pennsylvania?
I'm gonna say tilt Democrat because it was a very close election.
And what about New Jersey?
Like likely Democrat.
Okay. All right, so this is your map. This is your Senate map. We're going to hold you to. We're going to have to revisit this come the general election news night coverage. What about you, Higgins? Let's take a look at your Senate map. What about the state of New York? What would you put?
So in the state of New York, I have likely D, likely Democratic.
So likely D, you believe, for the state of New York. Okay. What about the state of Pennsylvania?
Lean D.
Okay, lean D. Interesting. Why do you make that determination?
I just feel like you know I do think it's gonna be close racing. Could certainly be tilt. But I believe that overall, I think Deluzio will have a nice little win there.
Okay, and what about the state of New Jersey, the Garden State?
I'm gonna go likely D for that one as well. I think the margin's gonna be higher than people think.
Okay, so you are projecting a Democrat sweep for all three races. What about you, Leo? What is your map for the 2002 Senate midterms? Okay, actually, Leo just told you he believed that New York would be safe Democrat. He believes that New Jersey would be likely Democrat. And the state of Pennsylvania, he believed is lean Republican. Leo, why do you believe that this is the map? Who do you think is going to be right and who do you believe is going to be wrong? He's making some bold predictions right now. Very bold. Nobody here did tilt, which is really interesting. Really interesting. He's like, I believe based off of primaries, New York will be safe. Okay. I'm going to do my math. Okay. This is what I believe. Okay. I believe that New Jersey will be lean and tilt, more closer than you possibly could think. I do think that Pennsylvania is a swing state. I am going to put that as the lean Republican. I do agree with Leo Perot's categorization. However, I do believe that George Santo, despite all the scandals, he will lean that by a safe margin as well. This is my map. So now let's go ahead and let's take a look at the governorship. All right. So who wants to do the West first?
Tom, you want to do it first?
Sure, I'll do the West. Sure.
Yeah.
So we just can go state by state in the West.
Yeah, I would say that. Yeah, go state by state. Go from the West all the way to the East.
Okay. So the West I have as probably I'd go likely D.
Okay, you want to tell me the states or?
Yeah. California will go blue.
You can just go solid. You don't have to go range of colors.
Okay, Oregon, blue, Washington blue, Hawaii and Alaska, or Hawaii blue. I think Alaska blue.
Okay.
I think uh, New Mexico blue, Arizona red,
Okay.
Utah red, Wyoming, Montana, Idaho red. I'll go Nevada too in the red column.
Okay.
And
Based off of that, you believe that last two will go blue, but the rest of the main mountainous ranges will go more Republican?
yeah, I think those will more so go Republican. I'll throw Colorado. Colorado, I think will be the closest state. But I think the Republican will pull it off.
Okay.
Coutier,
So
yeah.
what about the South?
The South, so the South, I think is going to be very much different. I think the South will actually be leaner. Um, I do think Nordum will make it a lot closer, but I have basically most of the states that he won today going red. So like Alabama and Mississippi, Louisiana, Oklahoma for Jeffrey Lee, Tennessee, Kentucky, Arkansas, um, Florida. I would throw in there too. South Carolina. I think the ones that will go blue will be North Carolina, Georgia, and Texas, but barely. Virginia, is that in that's not in this one, is it?
Yep, and you're just missing the state West Virginia and Virginia.
Okay, West Virginia red, and I'll say Virginia red as well.
Okay, so you think he'll lose his home state?
Yes.
Okay, so based off of what you're projecting a Robert Lee win in the South region. Could he win in a lot more Republican states than he is winning,
Yeah.
blue states?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think again that reason why the Democrat won all those more traditionally conservative states
Okay.
was because of the multiple Republican candidates in the primary, and I think Lee will flip them back
Let's
in
talk
the
about
general
the
election.
Midwest.
Yeah, so the Midwest, between Higgins and B, it's going to be, I think, one of the tightest governor races of the midterms.
Do you want to revisit this and go to the Northeast?
Yeah, let's go to the Northeast because
Okay,
this one I feel is a little more cut and dry in the Northeast.
go ahead.
In the Northeast, New York blue, Vermont blue. You know what? I'll just say all the states blue. I think it'll be another sweep again for Baldacci. In the Northeast, I think it'll be a sweep.
Okay. I believe New Jersey, Delaware. Yeah, right. What's
Yeah.
He Maryland a part of the South?
wait, no, actually, no. Delaware is not a part of it. So, what would you classify Delaware, Maryland?
Oh, and Maryland and Delaware are part of the South?
No,
Yeah.
I said Maryland's part of the South. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I did not know that. Okay, my bad. Yeah, Maryland and Delaware will go blue too.
Okay. All right. So now we also have the state of Pennsylvania. That is also part of the North.
Yes, I think that this state will actually go in. I think this is a tough state. Based off I think it depends on coattails, but I think right now I'm gonna go with the Republican, but based on that, I think it still goes pretty solidly blue, as the region as a whole, despite the fact that Pennsylvania, I think, in this barely will go red.
So now we have the remaining Midwest. What do you think?
Yeah, so North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, I think will all go for Skylar Bennett. And I think a lot of the other races are significantly in play.
You say Kansas or no?
Kansas as well, yes. Iowa is where both candidates are from, so it's good. That is going to be very interesting. Illinois, I think, will go blue, as well as Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Michigan. And I think those three states alone, for me, is what gives the edge in this election to Higgins. But I don't know. We'll see. I think Iowa, because Iowa's where both are from. I think it's gonna be close, but I'm gonna give it to Higgins, so blue. Missouri, I'll go red. Indiana, red, and we'll say Ohio, blue.
Okay. So this is your map. It's like a mashup between Biden 2004 and Obama.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be close.
Okay. And Owen, what do you say about this map?
Well, some of the races are correct, but like some others are like although not correct. Like the South more red, which it could be possible, but like
We're going to do
these,
your map in a second. You can just kind of do like a quick little response.
yeah. Well, I think his map is okay.
Okay, that's fine. That's perfectly fine. I just want to let everybody know that Leo has said he believes that the Northeast will be state blue, the Midwest will be likely Democrat, the South will be tilt Democrat, and the West will be likely Democrat. So he's just predicting a blue sweep. That could be interesting. I would like to hear why. In the meantime, Owen, your turn. Let's start with the West.
California, Oregon, Washington, all blue.
Okay.
Nevada, blue. New Mexico and Colorado.
Okay.
Republican, Wyoming, Montana, Idaho, Utah, Alaska, and Arizona, blue.
Okay. What about Hawaii?
Blue.
What about the Northeast?
All blue except Pennsylvania.
Okay. So you agree with Higgins' determination now?
Yeah.
Do you think that having a progressive label next to your name is going to hurt or help the Democrat there?
Could really help in a state like Pennsylvania.
Okay. Let's go to the South.
Okay. Texas, blue.
Oops. Okay.
Florida, blue. Alabama, red.
Okay.
Mississippi, Arkansas, Louisiana, red.
Okay.
Tennessee, Oklahoma. Georgia, blue. North Carolina, blue. Virginia, Maryland, Delaware, all blue.
Oops. Okay, what about South Carolina, West Virginia, and Kentucky?
Kentucky, red. West Virginia, red, and South Carolina, red.
Okay. All right, let's go to the Midwest.
Okay, Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Illinois, blue.
Okay, Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota.
Illinois.
Okay.
Republican, North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas.
Okay.
Schuyler wins Missouri and Idaho. Idaho very close.
Okay.
Indiana for Republican and Ohio.
Okay, and Higgins, what do you think about this?
I think it's a pretty okay map. I mean, I do think some of the more I do think there will be a little bit more red in the country considering it is a midterm year. Particularly, I think there'll be more out west. Obviously, him and I were in agreement on the Northeast governor race, but I mean, I think overall this is a fine map.
Okay. So I'm going to do my map now. This is what I'm going to say. With this, I'm going to project Nevada, Utah. Actually, you know what? I'm not going to do Nevada. Utah, Idaho, Montana, Wyoming, Colorado, Arizona, and Alaska for the Republican. For the Democrats, New Mexico, California, Oregon, Washington. I predict Nevada will be a toss-up, but if I had to choose, I would pick lightly, and I mean tilt Republican. When we go to the South, I do believe that the Democrats could hold on to the state of Florida, could win Virginia, Maryland, and Delaware, could also make inroads in the state of Kentucky and Tennessee, especially with Al Gore and how his performance in 1996. However, I do believe the Republicans can actually win Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina, and North Carolina. In the state of Arkansas, I do believe that it does have blue blood. It is going to go towards the Democrats here. In the state of Oklahoma, I do predict that to be going towards the Republicans. In the state of Hawaii, I predict that going for the Democrats. In Louisiana, it has a tendency to flip with the Democrats here. I'm going to pick that for the Democratic Party. In the state of Texas, I am going to give that to the Republican Party here. I don't believe the Democrats are actually going to be able to overperform Louisiana's margins in 2000 and carry that into the 2000 to midterm election cycle. I do believe that the South will be a lot closer than what the primary has indicated. I do believe that there is going to be some sort of competitiveness, especially now that the Republicans are on high alert. They're going to be playing defense rather than offense. I do think they're going to come home and start defending their own territory. When it comes to the Midwest, though, I am projecting that Wisconsin, Michigan, and Ohio will go toward the Republican. However, the Democrats could make inroads in Idaho, Minnesota, Iowa, Missouri, Kansas, Nebraska. And the reason why I say this because I do believe the Republicans are going to target high populating centers and disregard the Midwest sub-region, which is this mid part of the country. The reason is that this might help propel the Democrat to victory. Even one vote in this sub-region without a Republican vote will give all these states to the Democrat. However, I am also predicting that West Virginia will actually stay with the Democrats and not break ranks with towards the Republican Party. In Indiana, I do believe that it is going to go narrowly towards Skylar Bennett. So if I had to put my money on this in terms of who was going to win the Midwestern region, I would probably say the Democrat, but by a very tilt margin, it's going to be an upset. It's going to be kind of like a reverse of what you would think the map would look like. When we start to go into the Northeast, though, I do agree with some of my colleagues here saying that Maine will go toward the Democrats, Vermont, Massachusetts, and the state of Connecticut. However, I do believe the Republicans will make inroads in New Hampshire, Rhode Island. Yep, Rhode Island. Let me just put it here. Yep, Rhode Island. I'm actually going to retract my call for Vermont and give that to the Republicans. Vermont was very well known for voting for the Republican Party up until around 1990. I do believe that there are some Republican Democrat voters who can cross over to the Republican Party if the independent does entice them. When it comes to the final three, New York, Pennsylvania, and New Jersey, I would say New Jersey would be tilt or state Democrat. I do think that it's going to be a hotly contested race, but I do think that it will be on a national level for the governorship, state for the Democrats. When it comes to the state of New York, I do believe that to be more competitive, but not as competitive as Pennsylvania. I will give that to the Democrats. However, I do agree that Pennsylvania will go towards the Republicans. This would be my map.
The blue wall.
What do you guys think about this really weird looking map?
You got the you got the blue wall, and then you got the Chefman, because if you put Minnesota, Iowa, Missouri, Arkansas, and Louisiana, and Tennessee and Kentucky, it's a guy frying chicken. So you have that all going blue plus the blue wall, and you also have a weird kind of like governorship, like how Vermont goes to the governorship every election, like a weird Vermont, and like the Northeast split.
I think the West would go a little bit more closer. I think the Republicans are going to try to really flip California. I really do think that that is their main goal here. but they're not going to really succeed in the West, I do believe. But I do think that there's a real shot for the Republicans to win in the South and in the West. The North and the West definitely seem to be more leaning towards the Democrat. Do you think it's when you're divided by 4? I do think that 2 for the Democrats, 2 for the Republicans, but it's almost like a flirtation type situation going on here. I do think that we could be in for a really surprising upset. But yeah, this would be my map. It should be my prediction. A little different than what you might have expected, to be honest. But I think we pretty much covered everything. What do you guys think about overall on the perspective of like just us all talking for a moment here about the data and the results? Do you like the the reporting section of today's video?
Yeah.
Leah, what do you think? What do you find interesting about it? Do you prefer the old style or do you prefer the newer style? Leah, I mean Owen.
Hmm.
Do you prefer the newer style or do you like the older style?
I like the newer style.
Okay, and do you think that this was worth the wait, even if you had to wait longer for this type of format?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. I think this is pretty much it. I don't really think there is much to do or cover. I will make an upload in terms of just the projection side of things that is going to be uploaded, and you guys can go ahead and watch that video. It will be a lot more shorter than this live stream. Thank you for all of you guys who have been tuning into TNN, and we'll see you at the general election. Thanks for watching.